There are a lot of Armored Core games out there across most of the consoles. PlayStation 1 to 5, Xbox 360, PC, and if you were living in Japan in the early 2000s, even on your cell phone. Of course, there was also another Armored Core game that you've probably heard of in your travels but have never actually played, and this one was for the PSP. Armored Core Formula Front was released on the PSP in North America on December 15th, 2005, 3 months after Armored Core 9breakers released, firmly sandwiching it between the PS2 releases of Armored Core Last Raven and Armored Core 9breaker, and was FromSoft's first foray into the PSP market with the Armored Core series as a launch title, following up on the heels of its older brother, Armored Core 2, also being a launch title for the PlayStation 2. Formula Front is weird, but not in a bad way. It's actually a fresh take on the series. Instead of an absolute nightmare scenario of living for people across the world, if you want to hear more about that, check this video out. ACs are purely used as a spectator sport in this game. Instead of being a raven and a mercenary, you are instead an architect, tasked with programming your AC, or grid, to wreak the most amount of havoc it can on the other AI-controlled bot. Yeah, you heard me right. You're the designer, not the pilot. More on that later. The story is much more lively, with news broadcasts reporting on AC battles to the player, much like we would see if we were watching a sport on television in our world. Being a PSP game, they really wanted to show off the UMD format, shoving as many small cutscenes they could into your DAC mails. This is really cool, for the first little bit, then unfortunately gets a bit annoying, especially in the tutorials. That's right, no written tutorials. You gotta watch a video if you want to learn more mechanics of the game. Speaking of mechanics, let's go over some of the fun stuff that Formula Front has to offer. Much like Armored Core 9breaker, you start with all of your parts in the garage. There is no credits or missions to be found here, just plain old arena-destroying robot goodness. Instead, limitations are placed on the player. The most major of these limitations is the fact that no parts, outside of optional parts, can be shared between your 5 mechs. Weird, right? It's not an enormous downside, as you can always just go back to AC1 and swap whatever parts you want onto it, removing them from the other 4, and makes this more of a pain in the rear more than an actual limitation. But in the world of Formula Front, there is a lore reason for this. We, as a team, are supposed to have a lineup of 5 ACs that we can throw into the arena at any time. You see this from the other teams as well. They will actually swap their AC builds and what equipment they have at any time to test against other Architects teams' ACs, sending out whichever one is actually best for the job. If you embrace this limitation of the game, it can actually be a fun little build challenge where you don't always have your micro missiles or vertical missiles to save you. Are you going to use your bazooka heavy bipedal mech or your light little bumblebee? It's a great mini game you play before the actual game. The parts garage is just that, the garage. You know it, you love it. If you've played 9breaker, it's more of the same. Where the garage really differs, though, is in the AI tuning present in the game. I have mentioned it a couple times already, but the real meat and potatoes in this game is the AI programming system that FromSoft implemented for us in this game. Do you fancy yourself an architect of nightmares like the programmers who made Funeral Mask or Exile? Well, this is your game, because Formula Front gives you plenty of tools to customize your AC's combat patterns. You actually have 3 different ways that you can customize the AI on your mech: base character, performance, and operations. Starting with base character, this is where you truly decide what you want your AC AI to, well, do. You can customize your optimal ranges, frequency of weapon changes, movement patterns, and tactics in this menu. If you want a hyper-aggressive machine gun monster, you're going to slide that short-range slider all the way to the bottom so that your AC gets as close as possible for its optimals. But then, do you want it to boost, jump, or run there? This is all programmed in here, complete with a futuristic looking sine wave curve graphic to really make you feel like you're moving the positrons in your AC's brain around. Next is the performance characteristics. This is where you determine how effective your AC is doing at the tasks you outlined in the base character menu. Here you will set how effective your AC is at performing things like attack strategy, terrain navigation, target acquisition, and heat or energy management. Your AI capacity is actually determined by your AC's head part, giving you as many as 77 AI pieces or as low as 60. Adding more to your plate if you're a garage monkey that loves to tinker. Last is the operations menu. This is your advanced tactics menu and your time gate in the game instead of credits. You start off with very few of these, but unlock them as the story progresses. This will determine specific tactics that your AC can use in set intervals. Do you want your AC to bunny hop around to waste enemy fire? Overboost over an enemy and try to hit them from behind? Bum rush your opponent with all guns blazing? These chips are what let you do that. On top of this, the chips are set to 30-second intervals, so if you want to bum rush your opponent, then once the original 30 seconds are up, swap up to high evasion tactics, you can do that. It's a neat little system that gives the game some nice flavor. Of course, when in an actual battle, the AI can be a little bit wonky. A few of the arenas have slight inclines and the like, and your AC might do an absolutely fantastic job plowing into the environment or firing all of its rounds into the corners of the buildings. Of course, this can be compensated with more operations points put into terrain recognition, but even when maxed, your little robot might still dump all of its rounds into the wall. It should probably be mentioned that you are allowed to pilot your AC in the game. You don't have to touch the AI at all if you don't want. And the game gives you this in the form of a lore reason called Naked UACs, or NUACs. Controlling the AC isn't difficult, but I have to admit playing a Gen 3.5 game and not manually controlling my FCS up and down throws me for a loop almost every time. But you do get used to not having L2 or R2 quite quick. It also needs to be stated that the game looks great. You can tell that the models are significantly lower poly if you really pause to look at them, but the FromSoft team did an amazing job translating all of the Generation 3.5 parts to mobile without sacrificing quality in pretty much any aspect. If you look closely, you can see that the poly is actually just a texture, but if you're being that way and you want to be a stickler, I can't really stop you from being that. The game looks awesome. Menuing isn't too bad for a portable game either. There's quite a bit of loading delay between the menus, for example, from tuning to assembly, but it isn't too unreasonable. The PSP wasn't renowned for its amazing load times. UMDs didn't really catch on much for a reason. The music is also quite a bop, but significantly different from Koto Hoshino's works in the previous games. The more somber techie music is replaced with a pulse-pounding soundtrack that is more akin to something from a Wipeout or Ridge Racer game than an Armored Core game. This fits the aesthetic of this being a GP circuit with lots of fans and energy, rather than pits of mercs fighting for their corporate masters. Getting back to the story of the game, we are an architect in the Formula Front circuit. We start off in the lower B leagues, then eventually work our way up to the top league, where we start to take on the big dogs. The usual suspects have their teams here: Crest, Mirage, Kisaragi, all of them. Which makes me wonder, does this really take place in the same timeline as the console games? Crest, Kisaragi, and Mirage should all be on the brink of destruction after the events of Armored Core Nexus, and merging up to become Alliance in the Armored Core Last Raven timeline. But it doesn't really matter, and in my opinion, this takes place in an alternate, happier universe. Working our way up the ranks, we get to become rivals with an architect named Linus, a little rough around the edges AI developer for Team BT Wyvern, a rival team that entered the Formula Regular League with us at the same time. Linus hits us up multiple times throughout our league climb, telling us about his design philosophy, dreams, aspirations, and burning rivalries. We also get a villain arc storyline with the Team Ogre construction firm as they steal Linus's designs, are generally just insufferable in our emails, and are even labeled as general assholes in their team description. All the while this is going on, the Formula Front admin and news agencies are absolutely glazing the top team, Testarossa Artigiana, and their lead architect, Bretheren, a man who's suffering from just too much success. Much like our boy Ares in Armored Core 2. Bretheren is constantly talking about in the news how unchallenged he is, and how nobody can match his caliber, which of course makes us want to smack the smile right off his lips. I have a sneaking suspicion that Bretheren might be someone's self-insert, since there is literally a news event where Bretheren is talking about retiring, and a woman runs into the arena to say, "Bretheren considering retirement is completely the fault of the other teams. They need to step it up and start offering him the challenge he deserves," which is just absolutely insane, but fits the world that they have built for Formula Front quite well. Funnily, there is a team who just straight up copies Bretheren's top AC design, which is very funny to me, and I wish they existed more in the previous games. I always loved little knockoff pilots like that, like our boy Hustler 2 in Armored Core 2, or Mollycoddle. The shots of hundreds of thousands of fans in the stands and flooding into arenas is actually an awesome change of pace, and the little news bumpers they include with the Smack Talk email is great. It really sets the tone for the game as being much more lighthearted. The manual combat in the game is pretty much what you would expect from an Armored Core game on the PSP. It's Generation 3 combat on a handheld device, albeit without the shoulder button controls, and for those who haven't used a PSP in the past, it has an analog stick? Nub? Yeah, analog nub. Since I'm the oldest of old heads, I play as many of the games I can with D-pad, so I don't really have a choice when I play Formula Front. I have to use the analog layout. But if you are an analog user by default, it's gonna take some time to get used to as well, since you only have one stick, or nub, to use. You do have to get used to not moving around your FCS, but if you played a Gen 4 or 6 game, you're pretty much used to your FCS being automatic, so it isn't too huge of a change. Weapon balance feels pretty decent as well. Of course, there are the usual suspects of some things being absolutely devastating when you only use them in an arena context. The dual backshot laser cannon is a great example of this. Shell weapons are also much more in favor for players, since their primary downside of having an ammo cost is completely negated by the fact there is no credits in the game. Period. It's tough to balance around this fact, but it's of course no different to how many people played Generation 3 or higher arenas before Formula Front. How many of you equipped the quad-shot bazooka arms and just 4-shot opponents in a rushdown style in Armored Core 3? Yeah, I'm guilty of that too. You can still do that here. Of course, if you're a person who is overtly critical of the mobile gameplay, the game might just not be for you. But to be real for a second, the game really was designed with the AI aspect in mind. And if you play and tackle the arena and story as such, most of these control qualms go away very quickly. There weren't too many people who actually got to try Formula Front to my knowledge. Outside of a few people on the forums talking about the portable Armored Core over the years, I don't hear a lot of people online talk about it. I find that this happened with both Ninebreaker and Formula Front. They tend to not get as much love or praise since they're, frankly, glorified training simulators. But I'm a huge fan of the arena style of combat for these games. While I'm sure it was a much bigger success overseas in Japan than it was in the West, due to just how much more popular the PSP was over there, it doesn't really detract from how fun the game is. If you're one of those ravens who loves to jump straight into the arena before your first mission on your console level games, and I know there are a lot of you, give Formula Front a try. Worst case scenario, you can say you played one of the more obscure Armored Core games, and best case, you get to experience a completely new game that expands your Armored Core repertoire a bit. Formula Front is a great game that shows how awesome the world can be with ACs. If you want to hear an overview of how dark some of the older games can get compared to Formula Front, definitely check out The Darkness of Our Beginnings, where I go over the first 3 missions of Armored Core 1 and how bleak of a picture it paints. Have you played Formula Front? Did you enjoy the AI mechs, or did you manually pilot like the other games? What did you like or dislike about it? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, Ravens, I'll see you next time.